I've started moving through the seasonal interface for the spring. And here's where the postings are, along with one more for Sweden, along with points for the countries. Now, Sweden was originally allocated to Germany, but I'm allowing things to sort of shift over to some slow extent or whatever. I think that's probably cheating, but that's okay. To the Austrian side, so that's an extra point there. They've got all the Russian territory. I'm not giving them any of the territory in France, though. I think that's going a little too far. It's not going to make that big a deal, but money is important, and it seems to me that Sweden shouldn't completely collapse because Germany did, right? Anyway, we got the Ottomans here. They've started, reducing fleets and forts. Same with the Brits. They're reducing Singapore to eke out just a little bit extra money. At this point, I also cheated a little bit, just because I didn't understand the rule. Sent some U-boats here into the mid-Atlantic because only 6 steps can count at a time. After the bombing's taken place, now we take care of the submarine warfare. The Germans are going to do unconditional submarine warfare, and there's no harm to doing it a certain number of times. We get a little marker here. It's not going to matter because this is the last turn of the game, but as you collect them up, they end up affecting the U.S. entry situation. There are actually more unconditional warfare markers than you need, because after the 5th, they don't count anymore, which is when the U.S. comes in. So what I'm going to do is roll a die 6, and Lothar gives me a -1. The North Atlantic gives me a +1, so those cancel out. And then the Mid-Atlantic, this is a port, but it's not controlled by the CP because that would violate Netherlands. So actually we're penalized, I believe, there. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm rolling a die, and every step less than 6 means that I cause some damage. So the first one didn't do any damage. The second one is a 4, make that a 5. It only causes 1 point of damage to the Brits. And now in each case, I have to find the black die, wherever it is. I have to roll the anti-submarine warfare table. So in the North Atlantic, I get 11, which is less than this. I got doubles, so I get 2 hits against Lothar. And we'll give him the better subs. Now he has to return to port, which means, every season he has to sail out and get back out there. And then, I don't know if he's in range here in the Mediterranean, actually, to get back to port, which could be a problem. Not the Mediterranean, but the Mid-Atlantic. He can conceivably go to South America, actually. Okay. And then we took care of that, so we just roll for the damage that he takes. He got doubles, but he got a 10, which is less than this, so he also takes 2 hits, and we'll retreat him back into South America, where he's allowed to port for free. There probably is a port here in German Southwest Africa, too, that he could have gotten to. It's kind of hard to... Gulf of Guinea is this. So that would be... Yeah, he probably couldn't make it there, but he can make it there, I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's completely irrelevant because this is the last seasonal interface in the game. So we won't be playing around with those subs, except maybe to hunt shipping. So that's that side of things. Now we have the surface raiders. That'll be 2 dice, less than the highest radius score. in ocean boxes. Well, I have 2 of these. The radius score, the first one's 8. Okay, we get a hit against the Brits with that first one. And that only does 1 resource point to the Brits, much less effective. I don't think doubles matter there. Yeah, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And then the second one is also a hit, although there's something here, light cruiser. Yeah, okay. So we take another hit on the Brits there. So, you know, I mean, their income's reduced a little bit, that's all. And now we have the blockade. And this is where things get crazy. Oh, look, Austria loses 32 points. Yeah, first turn they've been blockaded. They've got no shortages up till now. They had a brief blockade before. But, boom, they're gone. They're out of the game. You know, they're out of money. And so the Central Powers will have absolutely no cash for the remainder of this game, just because a tiny little blockade was put here. Even though they control ports in Italy that they could be shipping goods through. I mean, this is just goofy, right? Honestly, it shouldn't be this way. They should be unaffected by the blockade by this, and the blockade should be a progressive for how many turns it is, not how long the war has lasted. Or it should have an effect whether or not there's actually a blockade, which would also make sense. I mean, the Brits would be preventing goods from flowing into the Mediterranean at all. Now, that's not to say that it would be anywhere near the level that we're hitting here, but I'm going to play it by the rules. These are just little things that I would seriously consider tweaking if I go back to it. You know, because, for example, if Italy is an allied, is a Central Powers nation, they would be able to ship goods into Austria. If Germany was not in revolt, I would be saying, as I've said before, if goods are able to get through Germany, some of them are going to get through Austria-Hungary. So, you know, maybe having this, but again, that's still too high when there's been no blockade whatsoever, and when southern Russia is completely controlled, and there's not going to be a serious grain problem coming in into Austria. It's very disturbing to me when the whole Balkans is controlled, when Turkey is open. It just shouldn't make sense this way, right? There has to be, there should be a much more complex economic model to handle this situation, but I can't make it up on the fly, and for one turn in the game, well, one season, it's going to make the game closer for the Entente to actually win it, to play it by the rules. So I'm going to keep it that way in the need for excitement. Russia, with their money, because of the loss of the Turkish territory, dropped down to essentially what they're losing each turn. They gave away their $6 to France and Britain. Italy's $2, not 3. It was actually 2 that they're allowed to collect off of the posting table. I don't know where I saw 3, probably Austria. Kept their cash, and they're building a unit with it. Kind of screwed up, forgot to take into account these things. Russia has gone into rebellion, though, which is a problem, because that big Russian army that's all over here, well, that just disappears. So I got the roll that removes them from play, that removes them as a country, and they're going to go into revolution, which is over on 6.8. For some reason, I'm not quite sure why this is revolution phase. Where is that? It happens over here. Okay. Well, I shouldn't have rolled yet. But yeah, at the end of this turn, then they've failed their roll, which means they're not going to get any more RPs from any source, and their army is basically going to disappear, and they're going to get 6 infantry corps back instead. So, you know, I had made the decision beforehand, though, to wipe out their cash, because they just don't have any, and no longer are they funded by the Italians. No longer do they get the $3 extra from the Ottomans being open. So Russia's just going to dissolve here. Playing as if I don't know about the impending Russian collapse. First fortnight, the Turks move into Batum here, and they're also pushing to take Port Said. They don't have to make a supply check until they've gotten here, which means they can trace their supply. No, they can't. Oops. That's the same problem here. I can't trace supply because I don't have a fleet present. Okay, well, I can withdraw in both cases. This one doesn't matter, but this one I made the attack, but I can withdraw afterwards. It's going to be a pain in the ass for the Russians to rebuild that no matter what. But it does mean I have to spend an Ottoman RP during the production phase, if I do this right, to give them... I have no way to really mark it. I'll just put it over there. Normally I put it under the country that's having it. So for example, the Brits bought one over here. I guess I could put it over on their money track or something to remind me that they have it. But they don't have it yet. They get it next turn during the builds, and there's no easy way to mark that. Okay, so that's what happened there. A failure here. They just spent money attacking. Over here, the French actually took Equatorial, and this West African force moved in and actually conquered it. The French paid for the attack and made the attack. Over here, Foch managed attacks against Metz and then struck here. This was an important space because it meant his cav could slide through into Nancy, and he's cut off the entire German line here. So they're going to have to figure out a way out. That's not going to be easy. They're probably going to take some supply checks, as far as I can see, because they do not have an infrastructure or anything to defend there. And meanwhile, the British attack has gone through northern Belgium. We're leaving the Muir alone. It's unimportant. The only important thing to it is to prevent the Belgians from being able to run out and take something like St. Quentin, which if they attack, they are still in supply, chances are they'll wipe themselves out along with the 1 BEF, and if they do move forward, I can smash them. Liège is the important thing. I got to take this out so I can take Dusseldorf. Right now, my points are at 9. Remember, 10 was my goal? Yeah, except for the Russian Revolution's going to come. Yeah, that's the problem. And I'm not attacking Austrians. If I was attacking Austrians, there'd be a chance of knocking them. But in the war for a while, their demoralization, well, it's at 5. It's not going to get all the way up to 9. So I'm not going to be able to throw them into revolution anyway. So I've got to get to that 12. And I don't see that happening with Russia collapsing. No. Although I shouldn't know that. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I already counted this one, so 3 more. So that gets me up to 12 if I succeed completely. If I take Dusseldorf, Strasbourg, and Metz, and don't lose Nice, which I can't because the Austrians have no money, and don't lose enough here, which might well happen. It looks like the Turks are pulling it real close. On the other hand, where I'm really in trouble is up here, because once the Russians fall, that probably opens Riga up to falling again. The only thing that's saving me, I've got Putnik and some Serbs and some Romanians and some Montenegrins all over there working their magic, trying to save Russia for me. Winding down. Now, Africa's kind of weird because there's no rule reducing, like once Germany goes into revolt, there's nothing that says they don't still get their free African points. So I'm kind of afraid to attack in Africa, to tell you the truth. Just because they can rebuild their units very easily. Over here, Foch managed to continue the breakthrough. This is after attrition's been taken. So there's you know, some German losses here, but they still have units left, so they'll be able to ooze some of them out. Some possibility they'll be able to defend Strasbourg. They'll be able to defend it better than, you know, it looked like it was likely to happen. The Brits, however, have busted through completely through Belgium. Namur fell, forces coming around this way, trickling through that way. The whole West Front's collapsed, but that doesn't matter. You know, the West Front is worth 3 BCs. I've got 2 of those 3. I'm at 10. 10 is not my magic number. Unfortunately for the Entente, Putnik's attack failed. Not terribly. He spearheaded it with the Russian tank. And now Russia collapses. And all their units go away. And they get like 6 infantry up in St. Petersburg. Or whatever that's going to do. That's not going to win them either of these hexes. And I've already made, I guess, the Serbian attack. So I've still got possible Romanian and Montenegrin attacks available. But those are going to be rough to actually succeed with. And I don't see points anywhere else. I really don't. The only possibility I see is an English naval expedition. Which could actually take Trieste and Venice. If I can get their ships moving down that way. That might be enough. Because right now, like I said, I'm at 10. This would be 11. That's as far as I go. And I probably am going to slip backwards from there. So, I don't know. Either way I see it, this is going to be a close enough call that what I'm looking at is probably status quo ante over here in the West Front. No Alsace-Lorraine shifted to the French. Much as they're going to be complaining about that, I can't see Britain supporting that advance particularly. I would think maybe the creation of a Poland here, quite possibly including, you know, Danzig, as it did historically, but probably not including anything out of Austria-Hungary. And Austria getting a sphere of influence in the Balkans like they probably desired, and maybe Venice. Maybe. That's a tough call. But yeah, that's really about it, and probably some Turkish advantages along the Russian in the Caucasus. And kind of no matter what, you know, I mean, if the Entente manages to eke out a victory here, probably the big difference is a little bit less for Austria, you know. But Germany's in no position to gain anything. In fact, it's possible that they may lose the Alsace-Lorraine region just because of this collapse that's going on here. It's going to be hard to, you know, Austria wants peace. They probably don't want it at the expense of trying to keep the Alsace-Lorraine in Germany's hands. And it is somewhat French, you know. It's such a screwed up situation at this point because they're German speaking. They've been under French rule for a couple of centuries, but it's still kind of fuzzy. But Poland definitely seems like that's going to be created no matter what. Anyway, I guess we'll push on into April. I forgot about the rains in Africa. Face back. In April. I guess the big problem here is I set up this, which will get me a rail net up here, but I can't do anything equivalent through the Sinai. I only had one. I was going to use this here, but honestly, it's not very helpful. I have to make my way all the way to Port Said. And given that, well, what I'd want to do maybe is set up a naval link. But if I set up a naval link, the Centrals have to go first, and the Entente can send Beatty over to cut that. The blockade is unimportant to maintain at this point. So I think we're kind of at an impasse in terms of the Turks being able to cross the Sinai. Elsewhere, I got some Brits in Canada that we're going to try to ship across, but that's really about it. Some limited additional forces. It's going to be hard to hold Strasbourg. That's going to be the main goal of the Central Powers on this side. I don't know if there's any real chance. The only place where an additional point remains to be taken is if somehow the Entente can take one of the two Russian centers. It's much more likely that they're going to lose a Russian center. Well, not really. Only if they attack might they lose one. So I think it's pretty much decided at this point. I just don't see a way to do anything. But I'll play out the rest of this turn. I probably won't play the next turn, though. Thing I can do, I've got the Canadians sailing in and a siege gun for whatever that's worth. Which might allow me to put a threat up here, or else an attack maybe on Salonika. Either of which is of value. I don't know how effective either one's going to be, but we might be able to just edge those points up. So maybe we do need both turns, because we couldn't get far enough on this one. I can see we're at the end of the line. Russians, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. They're not going to be able to make it with this big stack to attack anything. They would need the support of either the Romanians or Serbs to succeed. So that's one possible point I could get. Another, I could land the Canadians up here at Salonika. I'm not going to be able to get through to there without passing by the main fleet. Now, I could conceivably drive that away with Beatty. So we've got a possibility to get another one there, to get a point there. That's about it. And everywhere else, now it is real close. I've taken my first move with this, 1, 2, 3, 4. I could go to there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't quite make it to either of these bonus points. Conceivably, if I had done things differently, I could make a landing in Königsberg or something like that. I don't feel like playing it out. As far as I'm concerned, I think the Entente is right on the edge of a victory. I'm going to call this essentially a draw. I think they could get a victory if they played very, very carefully, if they played a little better than I have. So, for example, if I had picked up, units, some of these units that I'm pushing forward here, and sailed them over to Königsberg or something like that, or even down here from Danzig, I'd have to look and try to find the BC points. As far as I'm concerned, this is just a really close finish, and I'm going to call it a draw at this point, because I'm not enjoying this kind of point grab at the end of the game to try to score, that last point that I need. Basically, if I can get it, so I believe that I can get a successful landing at Salonika. And I think that'll get me to 11. And then I see another point if I had done things better. Shit. Maybe they have it anyway, because I took Strasbourg and I don't know if I counted it. I hate the counting aspect. So I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 for now, if I'm careful. Jeez, I don't know. And now I got to do those 6s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not quite. Maybe I get one. I don't enjoy playing out a race for a last victory point. I know that this is how a lot of ASL games or squad leader games end up. It's like, I'm within 1 point. Oh, that's so exciting. It's not to me. I'm going to start seeing really stupid shit happening to the extent that I'm just not interested in playing that out. So I'm gonna call this as, something where both sides are so weary. 12 ain't enough. I need 3 more points for the 3 seasons that I canceled out. So yeah, I'm not going to get it. There's no way to get to that level. So we're going to call this a Central Powers victory. There's just no chance that the Entente's going to be able to push this over. Obviously, I made a lot of mistakes, some rules mistakes, also some strategic mistakes. As the designer pointed out, probably the Russians should have attacked a little heavier. But it still came out pretty damn close to take that leave the British out option, by not invading Belgium, by using the political pre-game sequence to get to that. And, if I was trying to judge the game according to the historical model, I would have played out a very historical style of play. But instead, I was very interested because this one gave that particular, hey, let's keep the Brits out. Let's see how that works, And it actually worked pretty well. The only thing that I kind of dislike about it is the fact that the Ottomans are the counterweight, They would be too big an advantage if they came in and the Brits weren't in. I almost see it as, I don't know. I mean, I'd want to tweak around with that to the extent of, okay, well, you could bring the Ottomans in, but if you brought the Ottomans in, that would be a serious destabilizing sense in the same way that Belgium would be. So if the Ottomans came in on one side, whichever side it is, I think that should actually trigger Britain on the other side. And therefore, the Entente would never try to bring the Ottomans in. And the Central Powers would only do it as a, hey, look, Russia's about ready to collapse, or I'm going to go for Paris this turn, or whatever. And maybe I can get the jump with the Ottomans and, take the Russians out in the Caucasus and then, focus more against the Brits. I'm not sure. Anyway, a few other things that hit me, I don't know. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely issues that bothered me a little bit with this, but nothing as severe as bothers me in every other World War I game that's out there. It's a hard war to cover, and I think this does a pretty damn good job of it. I'll come back with my review after I clean it up.